What's an educated mama?
Hello, I'm Ryan Jordan, and welcome to the Educated Mama. During this podcast, we will learn from experts, entrepreneurs, creators, and leaders who are also mothers responsible for all the things. Let's celebrate women, learn a few mom hacks, and discuss the beautiful mess of motherhood. We're all learning together, right? Today's guest is Talia Moore, a passionate foodie from Australia, and we will be talking about how to avoid power struggles at mealtime and creating a positive relationship with food. If you have toddlers, you know what I'm talking about. Talia is the founder of Tummy Thyme, an LA-based healthy organic baby and toddler food company. She's also an ICEA-trained childbirth educator and DONA certified birth doula. Talia was born and raised in Melbourne, Australia, and has called Los Angeles home since 2008. She's the mother of a gorgeous 5-year-old daughter, and our children just happen to attend school together. Let's meet our guest. Hi, Talia. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. This is really fun.
I love that you're here, and I love that you're going to share with us your journey with food, because let me tell you, being a parent of a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, this is an ongoing challenge I know in my home, and I imagine so many parents have come to you with these same concerns. So the first thing that I would just love to touch upon is, how do you establish a positive relationship with food?
It's such a good question, Ryan. And, imparting a love of food is a really important legacy of a parent, because ultimately, healthy eating habits are actually established in the first few years of life. Mm-hmm. So it really is important to approach mealtime and food in a way that's going to set your child up for success for life. And there are so many ways that you can do it, but ultimately, in my conversations with so many parents over the years, what I have realized is that there is so much charge around food for parents themselves. So how do you not transfer your own charge around food and mealtime with your children? And there are many ways you can do. You can set your child up for success. The first thing I would say is take the pressure off. Meal times should be easeful. They should be fun. You eat for so much more than just satiation, right? You eat because it tastes good. You eat because it's joyful. It's an opportunity to sit and connect with your family members. So if you can just take the pressure off, if you can make the atmosphere around mealtime light and fun and easy, then you're already starting at a good place. The second thing that I would say is, setting your child up for success. And there are ways in which you can do that whilst taking the pressure off your child. So the first thing is understanding the differentiation of responsibility at meal times. So as a parent, my job is to decide what I'm going to make for my child, because I know more about nutrition than they do. And that's true for all parents. We know much more than our young children. So I'm going to decide what I'm going to feed my child, where I'm going to feed my child, and when. And that's actually where my job finishes. My child's job is going to be to decide if they eat and how much. And so it's not actually my job to make or encourage my child to eat. Many parents have in their minds that it's actually their job to feed their child. It's not. It's not your job to feed your child. It's just your job to offer food. It's your child's job to decide if they eat and how much. And so what that means in practical terms, I decide what my child's going to eat, because I know the kind of healthy foods that my child needs. I'm going to put the food in front of my child, and then I'm going to take a back seat, and my child is going to decide if they eat and how much. And that can be very tricky, because as parents, and I know because I'm a foodie and I love to eat and I want my child to eat, and there's something innate for parents about watching our children eat. Like it's a need to see our child eat.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what we want to do is we want to empower our children to make choices that are right for their body. So by saying to a child, you know, here is your food, I'm going to leave it up to you. There's nothing else coming later though, right? So whatever is here, you have to choose from. You don't have to eat, but there's nothing else coming later. And that's, you know, because so many parents want their child to take a bite, it can be hard to sort of release the power over to your children. But here's the thing. You want your child to learn to listen to their bodies. You want to empower your child to be in touch with the way that their body feels. And sometimes your child's going to be ravenous, particularly when they're going through a growth spurt. They've had a really busy day of activity, you know, and they're going to eat a lot. And then the next few days, they may not be that hungry. So you want to sort of look at, you know, this overarching week rather than day to day or meal to meal. But ultimately, if as a parent I start saying to my child, I need you to have a bite of food, like mummy needs you to have half of that piece of chicken before you can have dessert, or mummy needs you to, you know, have, you know, eat some food before you're allowed to leave the table. The tricky thing about that is we start taking away a child's power or start messing with the connection, the mind-body connection where a child checks in with their body. So, you know, what we want a child to do is say, I'm not hungry, so I'm not going to eat. Mm-hmm. Rather than an external force like my parent is telling me I have to have a bite. So even though my stomach is not saying I'm hungry, I guess I better eat. And that's where that charge around food starts getting quite tricky, is what is the intention behind eating? And, you know, a baby who's breastfed is on the breastfeeding until their sensation says that they're full, and they come off. We don't know how much they ate, you know, we just trust that they're full. So where does that disconnect begin to happen with parents, where we start saying, I need you to have a bite to eat? Even though we really do want them to monitor their own sense of hunger and fullness. So
I think that is such a wonderful point, because, well, let's back up to what you first said. When it goes back to how we were influenced as children, or what we know. I can't tell you how many times I heard, just 2 more bites and then you can have this dessert. Just 2 more bites and you can leave the table, you know, or you can watch TV or whatever that is. It was like you would get a reward for eating more. Yes. And that does make an impact on the way you think about food, whether you're understanding that in the moment or not. And as parents, you know, I've learned so much from you of saying, okay, I'm in charge of what they are going to be presented with to eat. And I now say to my children, eat until your belly's full. And, you know, sometimes I realize I have no control over that, you know? So here's my question then for you. You mentioned having the last meal, and you say out loud, this is the last meal of the day. And then you eat dinner at 5 or 5:30, and at 7 o'clock, your child says, Mommy, I want an apple. Mommy, I want a piece of bread. Mommy, I want whatever that is that they're hungry for in the moment. How do you respond? Because the tantrum is going to happen if that's their big idea, or they're hungry because they did not eat enough and they didn't eat till their belly was full. So how do you manage that?
I think that's a really good question, and I'm certain that there are many parents that are in the same boat. And when I go and talk to mummy and me groups, I get this question all the time. You know, my child didn't eat dinner and then an hour later is hungry and asking for food. You know, ultimately our goal is to have a child that is eating 3 meals a day and 2 snacks. Mm-hmm. If we start padding up and adding to those snacks, they're going to be less hungry at those bigger meal times. And breakfast, lunch, and dinner is typically where you're going to find your most nutrition. And snacks are generally less nutritious, right? They're not as nutrient dense as those beautiful meals where we're trying to hit a protein and a carbohydrate, and they're less thought out meals usually. So with that in mind, our goal is to have our children ready and hungry at those 3 main meals during the day, and the snacks are to tide them over. So we really want to get into a rhythm of getting our children filling up during mealtime, and not in between meals. So what I would say to you is, it's really, I'm very, I believe firmly in my ideas of setting strong parameters around meal times, but then once you set those strong parameters, you take a back seat. Yeah. So one of my strong parameters for us in my home with Miami, at dinner time, I put out dinner. Her dessert is offered to her. We've talked about this before. Her dessert is offered to her at the same time.
Can we talk about that? Because for me, that was a big leap of faith. Because inevitably, my kids will eat the dessert first before they eat anything else, because that's what they want.
Yes. So this happened to me last night. My daughter happened to have a big idea that she wanted to have some chocolate last night, and that seemed reasonable to me. Why not? So when I put out her dinner, I put out the chocolate that she had asked for with dinner. And as I imagined, the first thing that she ate was the chocolate. Or she may have had a couple of bites of the chicken that I had made, and then it was the chocolate. And then she said to me, Mummy, I want to go get something from my room. And I said to her, well, the way we have family meals is that we have to stay at the table. So had I let her leave, I don't know that she would have come back. But she had a couple of bites of chicken, she had the chocolate, and then I said to her, our plan is that you stay at the dinner table while Mummy and Daddy finish eating. So she sat there. 2 minutes later, she ate most of what was on her plate. So the reason that I like the idea of including dessert at mealtime, and this is not my brilliant ideas. I'm very much influenced by some amazing people like Ellen Satter of the Ellen Satter Institute, who talks about taking the power away from any particular item of food. There is no food that is more special than any other. And if I hold out the chocolate until she's eaten the dinner, I've put a halo around that chocolate. And I don't want to do that. I don't want her to put emphasis or power behind any particular item of food. So
I love that halo around the chocolate, like we projected that, I'm like, ooh, dessert. It's like I put halo.
And so it's to give your child an even playing field when it comes to food. I mean, she can eat in any particular order. The thing that she knows is that we have, as I said, setting like really clear parameters around mealtime, is that she can choose what she wants from what's in front of her, but nothing else is coming later. There's no dessert coming later. There's no other meal coming later. So, if your child is asking for the apple an hour after dinner, my recommendation is that you offer the apple with dinner. Whatever that item is that Charlie or Miles are reaching for later, let's bring it to the dinner time and let's include it as part of the meal. And let's say, this is dinner time. And, I always think that dinner time should be 2 or 3 hours before bed, because nobody should go to bed on a full tummy. It's not ideal. So we don't really want them eating later anyway. So you want to sort of bring that snack and involve it into your mealtime, as long as it's, healthy enough. So
that's a great idea. And I didn't think about that. So I should listen to more of what they ask for and then make that an opportunity for me to say, oh, here's more things that you're craving today or tomorrow. Because I find they go in patterns.
Mm-hmm.
They crave a lot of the same things. Like if they say mango, they'll say mango like 3 or 4 days in a row. And then we're on to grapes, and then we're on to bananas. And now next week we don't like bananas anymore. Can we touch upon that a little bit of nutritious eating? Because say I do all of my grocery shopping for the week and we get ready for our meals and we meal plan things out. And last week, my daughter was obsessed with green beans, loved green beans. This week, she was craving them. I was like, okay, we can have green beans again. This week, no, mommy, I don't like green beans. Well, okay, should I just have this mentality that let's just go with the flow? Because I change my mind about food too, not that fast. But tell me how to navigate that.
So there's so much to say about that. The first thing is, it's the same thing goes on in my house. There was, for the longest time, I could not get my Annie to eat any leafy greens. And, I don't like the idea of sneaking food, vegetables into food. But of course I was doing it because I was just wanting to get iron in her. But she went, for the longest time, she wouldn't eat leafy greens. But because of what I understand about exposure to foods with children and the importance, I continue to put it on her plate. So just to talk about that first, because I know many parents will find this really helpful. What do you do about rejected items? Rejected items will only stay rejected as long as you don't put them in front of your child. Most children will go on to love all foods, but if you stop putting something in front of your child, you're not giving them the opportunity to move beyond it being a rejected item. So you actually want to continue to put it on their plate without any pressure to eat it. So it's, for most children will say no to foods because it's unfamiliar, not because they don't like it. So it's just continuing to make food familiar is really important. So, it comes back to what I was saying before about, taking the pressure off. You can put foods in front of your child and there's no pressure to eat them. Their food preferences are going to be constantly changing, as are ours. Like, I go through a period of time where I'm really into a particular food or a particular fruit, and then I'm over it, and so I think the key is not to be too dictated by what your child is asking for, but to make decisions based on what you feel that your children should be exposed to. And if you continue to offer a variety of healthy foods, you're going to be offering your children a variety of nutrients. So I would say, do the green beans, but don't get stuck on the green beans. Think broccoli, think pumpkin, think, cabbage, lettuces, if you can, every time you go to the supermarket, think, what else could I put in front of them that's a different color, that's a different texture? It offers opportunity to talk about food. Oh, look, you had red peppers today. Next week, we're going to do green peppers. Does it taste different? Because the color's different. Do you notice any? It's like just offering your child opportunity to interact with food is such a win. We have to reframe in our minds as parents what success looks like. Success doesn't necessarily look like a child eating the food that you put in front of them. Success looks like your child allowing a food to remain on the plate. I say that's a big, big win as a parent. Actually, the big win was that you put the food on the plate in the first place, because we're all just doing the best that we can right now. But even a child allowing you to leave that rejected food on their plate, that's a win. The next step of success is that they interact with the food. They pick it up and they smell it. That's a total win. And then the next level of win is that they actually taste it and then they say, no, thanks. And then, and then the final point, which will happen at some point, is that they're going to taste it. And then you may start again where they are not even interacting with the food again and not wanting it on their plate.
So let's talk about that. The gratifying moment when you finally made a meal, right, that your child loves. I'm not going to deny, sometimes I do the happy dance. I'm like, yes, I made something they like. But you and I have talked about this too, praising about eating food. So we want to be careful that we're not like great job eating that oatmeal, or well done, you love that food. So how can you facilitate a healthy relationship and also be happy at the same time that your child is trying more foods without being overly happy about it, so that you don't instill a false sense of accomplishment into your child when eating food is just part of living and life? So tell me more about that.
That is another great question. Good questions, right? So, this is an interesting and tricky topic, because labeling can be troublesome. Both labeling your child a picky eater and a good eater can be troublesome. Similarly, praising or criticizing around food can be tricky. And it's not just the criticizing that's tricky, it's also the praising. So we'll talk about why. As we started off talking about, ultimately our goal here is to foster your child's love of food and feeling good about themselves with eating. So if we start praising or if we start criticizing, then what we do is we change the reason behind why or when our child might eat. And we really don't want our child to eat to make us happy, right? Mm-hmm. So if my child has a bite of something and we're like, yay, you did it, good job, I'm so proud of you. We have put so much power and emphasis on what it means to take a bite of something or what it means to eat. But if we take that power away and we say, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you eat. It doesn't matter if you eat this, if you have a bite, if you hold it and you smell it, because I trust you to make the right decisions for yourself. You're ultimately empowering your children to eat because their body is telling them to eat, not because of any other reason. And the other part of it is that you really don't want to set for your child's preferences to be your own. So if I'm going to offer my child mangoes, we were talking about mango before, I love mango. Anyway, I made mango pudding the other day. I love fresh mango with lemon squeezed over it. Frozen mango for dessert. Any kind of mango, I'll take it. So if I was offering my child mango and I was like, ooh, mango, yum, 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 and I offered it to my child that way, I'm really telling my child how I feel about mango, right? Flip to, if I'm thinking, I'm really trying to introduce, cruciferous vegetables or cabbage or something to my child, and I personally am not a big fan of Brussels sprouts. In fact, I detest boiled Brussels sprouts, which is the way my mum used to offer it to me.
You were a child of the 80s. You had boiled Brussels sprouts. I don't even think I liked them until I was in my mid-30s because I didn't know they could be prepared a different way.
Totally. And that's another good point about preparation, but for another time. If I was to offer a bowl of Brussels sprouts to my daughter, I'd probably be like, what's she going to do with that, So what am I communicating there with my own preferences? I don't want my child to choose what she likes based on my own likes and dislikes. I really want her to figure out what she likes and dislikes. So the issue with praise, it's both those things. It's that you don't want a child to go on to have this lifelong idea about themselves based on the fact that they were labeled that they were a picky eater. You don't want it to become identity shaping. And the other aspect of it is you really want them to eat because they want to eat, not to fulfill your needs as a parent.
These are such great tips, Talia. Honestly, every time I hear them, it doesn't matter whether I hear them the first time or the fifth time, it still reinforces my need to do continuity, because as parents, we're going to slip and fall. We can know all this information, but life happens. Sometimes we're like, oh, just have the piece of bread, or I'm so tired. I can't do this battle right now. But it's a consistent reminder that you know what, we can make these choices and we can stick to our boundaries. And inevitably, it's more helpful for our child than anything else. And sometimes, you know, when we stick to a plan, then of course it creates safe boundaries for our children where they know the answers and they will quit asking. You know, just like I establish boundaries for everything else, it's the same with food. Eventually my kids will know, well, don't ask mom for dessert every night, because we're not a dessert every night household, but maybe we're a dessert with meal household. So that's a good, you know. I also want to know how to add, you know, nutrition is not my background. So when I'm making meals, the other day you had mentioned to me, like, oh, you could add a little bit of lemon on this and that'll change the way your body processes the food. I wouldn't know that. So tell me a little bit more about some little quick things that we can do as parents to just help our children digest better, and what we can do if I'm making dinner in the kitchen, what's something I can do that I can add to my child's food that can help them absorb it better, or it has better, you know, nutritious value, or that I shouldn't do so I shouldn't take away the nutritious value. Do you have any pointers there?
Definitely. One of the most simple ways to add nutrition, and I'm constantly talking about this in all the Mummy and Me groups because it's just so simple, is to cook your grains and your oats in bone broth. I'm going to tell you why.
Okay.
If you cook your grains, so if you can cook your grains in bone broth, you're immediately adding so much nutrition and protein and iron to your child's meal rather than cooking it in water. So that's the first one. And actually I can share a very simple bone broth with you for you that you can post with this.
I would love to share that. Thank you.
My pleasure. But if you make a very neutral tasting bone broth, so you don't add any onion or garlic or herbs, you just slow cook bones on their own, it's very subtle tasting, and you can also add it to fruit purees, to, you know, breakfast cereals, stuff like that. So that's a really simple one rather than just cooking it in water. You know, another one is coming down to variety and presentation. So if you can try and continue to mix things up, take the Brussels sprouts that we were just talking about. If your child rejects something, rather than cooking it the same way next time, try and do something a little bit different. You know, in Europe, they pretty much put butter and parmesan on everything, right? If we were in Italy or France, and that's how they get kids to eat vegetables, is you get your broccoli, and rather than just steaming it, why don't you roast it with a little extra virgin and sprinkle some parmesan on top, and it instantly makes it more appealing, not only to children but to adults. Parmesan with a little broccoli is so yummy.
Oh, not to go to Italy. When can we travel again?
I know.
Oh.
I know. But since we can't travel right now, we can make Italian food at home. And we can roast some cauliflower with a little, you know, some thyme and some parmesan, you know, grate a little fresh parmesan over at the end, or get a little ghee or grass-fed butter and stir it through your vegetables. Is such a simple way to add caloric value. So if you're worried that your child isn't eating enough food, you can add a little ghee, which is clarified butter, or a good quality grass-fed butter, and mix it through, you know, your vegetables. And that is a really simple way to add nutritional content to your food. The other thing is food combining. So rather than just offering, you know, a carbohydrate on its own, like a rice, let's say, if you can combine your rice with a legume or a nut. So let's give your child, you're cooking up some rice, let's mix through also some quinoa. So it's a quinoa rice mix. You're offering your child much more nutrition in that one bite than if it was just the rice on its own. Or you can mix rice and lentils together. So that mouthful is instantly more nutritious. Or you could do rice and a little bit of, flaxseed meal mixed through, which is very difficult to detect in taste. The other thing is if you're cooking a bone broth at home, which I recommend that you do rather than buying bone broths, because commercial bone broth is usually very high in sodium and doesn't usually have the same good quality, like the cartilage and the stuff that really is where the nutrition is. If you cook it at home, you'll also at the end, once you've cooled it, you'll have a big thick layer of fat sitting on the top, which most people will scoop off that fat and throw it out. I say scoop off that fat and keep it in the fridge, and that's what you use to mix through your rice, or that's what you use to cook your eggs with when you're scrambling eggs, something like that, because you're adding so much nutrition using that really good quality fat that our children need for growth and brain development. So, that's a good one. You can also, if you're not a meat eater, you can make a great bone broth with fish bones as well. I'm on the bone broth thing today.
I know, but I love it. This is so intriguing to me because I wouldn't have thought of bone broth. That wouldn't have come to the top of my mind. I would think add some peanut butter or avocado or something else. So I really appreciate you sharing that with me because I wouldn't have thought of that. That's great. So Talia, I also want to just touch upon the fact that you are the co-founder of a company. Are you the founder or the co-founder?
Well, I say co-founder because we would absolutely not be here today if not for my husband, Jono, who has been with me from day one, and he's equally as invested and busy with the business as me. So definitely co-founder.
Yes. So I just want to make a point because this is the Educated Mama, and part of, being a mother and a business owner means handling all the things, and there's a deep mental load that goes with that. So my question to you is, for working moms out there, is there anything that you could tell us that you have as a mom hack, or anything that you can share with us that has really helped you with your time being a mother and being a business owner? Because I know for me, time is the most precious thing, and I wish I had more of it. So tell me, is there anything or any tips you would give in regards to that?
I mean, I'm laughing because I'm like, goodness gracious. I'm a work in progress with this question.
Mm-hmm.
I would say ultimately grace, giving yourself grace, because, Ryan, let's be it is just so intense and tough, particularly during COVID times, being a working mum, because, we also just don't have the same resources that we had before to keep our children busy and happy and occupied. So, I think ultimately my takeaway from this past year, because there's less balance, because, because we don't have the same outlets that we had before. So yeah, I would say it's about grace, and that just to give yourself as a mum to know that what you were doing is enough. And that's what I said. We started this conversation by saying, you put food on the plate. Good for you. We talk about nutrition and trying, reducing screen time and keeping it healthy, and, but ultimately, you told me not to swear, but it's a shit show. We're just trying to do, the best that we can do, and just to be kind to yourself, because we're all having a rough go of it. And it's not about being perfect. It's about doing the best that you can do at any particular moment. And then when you find yourself having not done the best that you can do, forgiveness and forgiving yourself and saying and acknowledging the fact that these are not normal times,
Mm-hmm.
and that we can only be present in the moment and do the best that we can in any particular moment. So I guess that would be
all the time is, your best for today is not going to be your best for tomorrow. sometimes I'm going through life during this pandemic and I'm like, I'm owning this. I got this. Everything's on schedule. My kids didn't hurt themselves today. Everybody's happy and smiling. And then there's other days where I'm like, I am 5 minutes late to everything. And I think my dog just ate a chocolate bar. So, we're just all trying to do our best for the day and keeping our eyes on everything because there's a lot going on inside of here while we're trying to navigate all of the things that we're doing. And I just have one last question for you today, and that is in regards to being a mom as well as having a company. What has been your greatest joy?
In which of those arenas? In the mum arena or the job arena?
Yeah. So I'm thinking a combination of them both. For me, I can say one of my greatest, feelings is that I know that I'm a role model for my daughter. I know that I'm shaping her world. I know that I'm creating her to be an independent little person. So I'm curious to know, when you wake up every day and you look at Mayani and you go off to work and you do these things, a lot of people focus on the mom guilt, and I'm just trying to focus right now on the joy. So tell me a little bit more about what part of that brings you joy.
Such a great question. What part of it brings me joy? I think what brings me joy is to pave the way for Mayani to see that if she puts her head down and she really wants to achieve something, that she can achieve anything. And, I'm constantly saying to Mayani, it doesn't matter to mummy and daddy if you fail. It only matters that you try, that you have an idea and you give it a go. And that, to me, to be able to go out and do that myself, and I often feel like, I am failing at many things, and that's just the truth. But ultimately, I keep coming back to the joy of being given the gift of being able to try something, because not a lot of people have the same opportunities to have an idea and try it. And that's what gives me joy, is that I am one of the lucky people that had an idea and can get up every day and try and make it work.
I love that. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm truly grateful that I had this opportunity to sit down with you. And thank you so much.
Right back at you, Ryan. Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.
Thanks so much for listening today. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode and you had some great aha moments. I am so passionate about empowering women, and I can't thank you enough for your support. If you know an inspiring mama or you are an inspiring mama, send them our way. Be sure to tune in every Wednesday, and please like, follow, and subscribe to The Educated Mama. Write a review, leave us a comment, share this podcast with your friends. I'm Ryan Jordan, founder and CEO of Educated Nannies. You got this, mama.